That's a nice novel you have there. It would be a shame if something were to happen to it. And it would be a shame if its misfortune were caused by one word, and it very well could be. And it's not a bad word, or an offensive word, or anything like that, so get your mind out of the gutter. And it's probably a word you're using quite often. And you've probably guessed what word it is, and this intro is probably going on long enough. And so it's time to ask the question, can "and" be harming your writing? And I don't have another point. I will preface this video by saying that I'm not entirely sure if "and" is really a problem. This is sort of a theory of mine that I've been toying with, and it could be quickly refuted, and I'm fully prepared for that. I'll also say that "and" does not bring with it any sort of grammatical or syntactical issues. The issues talked about today are more to do with prose flow and feel than grammatical correctness. "And" can be an important part of good quality writing, but that doesn't mean it should escape without scrutiny, which is exactly what it's getting today. "And" is primarily used as a conjunction, a word that joins two related ideas together. He was late to the barbecue and forgot to bring the potato salad. "And" can also be used to denote the last item in a list. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Book learning has never really tickled my fancy, so I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of "and's" grammatical usage. I'm going to assume that you know at least the basics of how to use it. The main problem I think "and" presents to the fiction writer involves weakening arguments and disrupting flow. Can we agree to talk about the arguments thing first? Using "and" to join multiple ideas together, I think, has the effect of weakening those ideas individually. I'm not someone who's good at debating, but I can see an argument that every argument you make should be powerful enough to at least be presented on its own. I feel like if you're giving a list of arguments to convince somebody of something, or in the fiction context to describe something to somebody, or to get a piece of characterization across, and you have to link all of those ideas with the word "and," it inherently, on like a subconscious level, implies that each of those individual ideas are too weak to stand on their own. Next up is the issue around flow and feel of the prose. When you say something like "he drew his sword and thrusted the weapon towards the stunned deli counter employee," you're presenting two different actions and doing so in one sentence. I see the potential there for the impact of both of those actions to be weakened in some way. The reader is absorbing and imagining the first idea, but that imagining has to immediately stop as we pause at the "and," at which point we are thrust into a whole other idea and image. I don't know how big of an issue this is, but if you're overusing this structure throughout your story, it might negatively impact the writing. No matter how well you write that first image, it's not given the same time to land, the same time to absorb into the reader's mind as, at least I think it would be, if it was part of its own sentence. "And" is not a word that the reader is likely to notice all that much, but they will notice the pause in the action and movement of the story. A lot of times in these situations, the first action could be eliminated entirely and the same meaning gotten across. You can't thrust a sword without having drawn it, at least not very effectively. The first action in this case is strongly implied by the first, so do you even need to convey the first? One alternative to "and" is the gerund. A gerund is an ing verb that serves as either the subject or the object of a sentence. He drew his sword, thrusting the weapon towards the surprised deli counter employee. I don't know if that's quite a gerund, but it kind of fits as one. I like gerunds because they are verbs, and verbs give you choices to create imagery and change the feel of the writing to whatever you want it to be. I don't like gerunds because they use ing verbs, which are annoying when overused and have the effect, at least in my mind, of slowing down the prose, which isn't always a bad thing, but it is something that happens. I had a habit earlier in my writing career where I used gerunds way too much, and it gave the writing this strange rhythm that was just bad. Well, I mean, the writing was bad in general, but the Garands certainly didn't help. You'll see Garands used a lot in action beats that follow a line of dialogue. I challenge you to a duel, he said, drawing his sword. That's an alternative way to present the same idea with an and. I challenge you to a duel, he said, and drew his sword. Both work and both have a slightly different rhythm. I wouldn't use either one exclusively. A mixture of the two throughout your writing is perhaps the best approach here. You can also use as in this context, something like, I challenge you to a duel, he said as he drew his sword. That gets rid of the and the gerund, and also strongly implies that the action happens at the same time as the dialogue is said, which you might want to imply. Another, though less common replacement for and is the oft ignored semicolon. Well, it's used for winky faces, and if you're a programmer, it's probably the reason your code didn't compile, but other than that, it's not used very often in fiction. Semicolons are used to connect independent but related clauses not separated by a coordinating conjunction like and. I researched them for an hour, but I still don't understand how to use a semicolon because these are semicolons and no one understands semicolons, but theoretically it can be done. I don't know if semicolons are better than and though, and I have seen some folks warn fiction writers against overuse of the semicolon. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with and, but if you are using it a lot, it can be a sign that you're overusing certain structures, and your writing may become repetitive in this way. A balance and variety of structures around delivering action beats and characterization is often best. Part of this relates to your own style, and you do have some grammatical flexibility in fiction that isn't present in other areas of writing like academic or scientific writing, so the fiction writer has a bit of leeway here. Some writers get a lot of mileage out of circumventing the rules, including rules around the use of and, but this must be done deliberately in a way that ultimately improves the prose. I do think there is value in evaluating what you're doing and seeing if there are ways to add more variety to your writing. There are a lot of structures that use and that can use other words, and mixing some of these in is probably a good idea. In this way, the problem with and might not be a problem with the word itself, but rather overuse of the structures that and commonly finds itself in. Feel free to use and, but also be mindful and careful about the potential downsides and problems using and other common words can cause in the flow and feel of your prose. And as always, go with what works. And okay, I'm going to stop that sentence there because that's ridiculous. Anyway, let me know in the comments down below how you feel about and please tell me if I'm insane for choosing this as a video topic. As always, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to subscribe, and I will see you next time.